One moment, everybody. We have just a slight technical difficulty. Make sure my music's going to work. There we go. So welcome to group exercise online with the YMCA of York and York County. My name is Justin, and today we're going to be doing a seated gentle yoga. So with our yoga practice, I like to have a theme for each class. And the theme for this class is the core. Now the core is described a lot of different ways by a lot of different people. But what I mean is that any structure in the body that helps us maintain the shape of the trunk, the relationship between the rib cage and the pelvis, and the structures that help us support ourselves against gravity. Watch my music again. So when we're looking at the core, we're looking at a couple of different functions. The core helps us balance because gravity is constantly pulling us downward. So helping us balance by aligning the body structurally. It's the interplay between the pelvis and the rib cage, and also what helps us support against gravity. So we're going to look at some of those functions of the core in yoga today. Balance, resisting gravity, and the just general shape and structure of the trunk. For this class, it'll be a fairly low to moderate intensity class. The only thing you need is a chair and probably a water bottle so we can hydrate as we go. You can do this barefoot. You can do this in socks, or like me, you can wear shoes. It just depends on your comfort level in your space today. Again, one last note before we begin. We do have limited space, so I will be moving the chair around and I will be moving myself around in relationship to the screen. So I will cue as we go to help make that a little bit easier. But we can start out having a seat in the chair with both feet firmly planted on the floor, sitting up under your own strength. So let's first take a minute to relax, to let go, and to release any stress or tension that we're coming into it with. A great, easy way to do that is to start with taking a big, full, comfortable, deep breath in and let it go. So when you're ready, big, full breath and release. As you release the breath, allow your body to settle into the chair, settle toward the floor. Big breath in and release. So do that 2 more times at your own pace, inhaling to a point of comfortable fullness and letting the breath out all at once. So let's take our breathing exercise and help it engage our core also. So the breathing exercise we're going to do is Ujjayi Pranayama, or victorious breath. And I like this breathing exercise because it uses the pelvic floor, the lower abdominal muscles, and engages the glottis. We have a couple of domes in the body that are perpendicular to gravity. Because again, gravity always pushes down. These domes help us lift up. So our base is the pelvic floor, the diaphragm is the next dome, and then we have the muscles at the shoulder girdle and the muscles in the neck that all help us to maintain that integral shape of the trunk. So starting with diaphragmatic breathing and then adding the ujjayi breathing or the aspirant sound, this is a really rich yoga breathing practice, and I hope you do practice it. If you're at home, there's no reason not to. Sometimes in class, you might feel a little shy about making a sound as you breathe, but I hope you use this practice and enjoy it and get all the benefits from it. So starting out, diaphragmatic breathing. I'm going to turn to the side. I want you to stay facing the camera, but I do want to look at the movement of the belly. So taking both of your hands, find your belly button, and move the hands down a little bit lower. We're going to inhale. And for the first round, I want to blow out through the mouth if you're trying to cool off hot soup. Inhale. And blow out. When you think you're done, keep blowing a little bit more. Let's try that again. Inhale and blow. What we're trying to do as you exhale, as you blow out, is to see if you can feel the stomach muscles contract. And then as you inhale, they'll naturally expand and open. Let's do 2 more breaths. Allowing the ability to expand as you inhale and contract as you exhale. Taking it a step further so that we can engage the pelvic floor and the lower abdominal muscles with this action of the diaphragm. So what we're going to try to do is pull level 1, pull the belly button back toward the spine. Level 2 is you really try to contract the lower abdomen, or the space between your 2 hip bones. So just the lower belly contracts. When those muscles squeeze, the pelvic floor activates. So we don't have to directly work with the pelvic floor. We can kind of work with it through the action of the lower abdomen. So try a couple more breaths. Exhale and focus on pulling the belly button in or contracting that lower abdomen. Now, I am breathing through my mouth on this, and I want you to try that too, so that we can really focus more on the contraction of the stomach than having to worry about blowing out through the nose. So we're just trying to make it a little bit easier to get that muscle contraction. So when you're ready, just give me 2 more breaths, trying to contract the lower abdomen. Now, for the third part, adding the aspirant sound to the breath. So they sometimes call this Darth Vader breathing because we're going to use the same muscles that you would for whispering with the breath. So we're going to inhale, and as you exhale, pretend you're fogging up a mirror. So these are contracting the same muscles that you would use if you were whispering or fogging up a mirror. One more time. Level 2, exhale with that sound and try to keep those muscles contracted as you inhale again. So we're going to inhale, exhale, inhale. Let's try a couple of breaths like that. We go. So for our final step, we're going to try to do that with the mouth closed. This will create a different feeling of pressure, maybe in the head or the upper neck. So just try to, especially if you're new to this, try to keep it very light at first. And then we finally have full ujjayi breathing with that diaphragmatic breathing, contracting the lower abdomen. So putting it all together, start with an exhale through the mouth, and about halfway through, close the mouth and see if you can keep that breath through the nose. So we go. Now, if you do this correctly, you probably will feel the contraction happen at the lower abdomen automatically. So let's do 3 rounds of the full Ujjayi breathing, and then we'll start moving around. So when you're ready, inhale and start. So we've done the Ujjayi breathing. The next thing we're going to do are 2 simple exercises looking at the interplay between the hips and the rib cage, because this is our second function of the core. So again, I want you to stay facing toward the camera. I'm going to turn to the side, and we'll do a seated cat-cow. I don't want to spend too long here, but just feeling the spinal flex. Starting out with the feet flat, I'm away from the back of the chair. And I'm going to do this version with my fingertips on my knees. To start cat-cow, I'm going to lift the sternum, flexing up, and then drop down, rounding the back. Lift this chest, tuck the spine. Flexing up, pulling with the fingertips, and flexing back, pushing with the wrists or the heel of the hand. So we lift, flex up, push, flex back. Add your breathing here if you want. In addition to moving the chest, try to move the hips and the pelvis too. So I'm rocking forward at the lower back, and then pushing the hip bones or sit bones backward. And that will help drive the rest of the spine along with it. So flex up and flex back. It's not just the upper body, we want to get the lower body involved too. And that's our seated cat-cow. So I want to remember that. We're going to come back to that in a couple of different exercises. Not all of these are going to be strictly yoga exercises, but they're all going to be useful to a yoga practice. So the next one we're going to do is a lateral spinal flex. I want to try this without using the arms first, so that we can really examine the interplay between the rib cage and the hips. So we can start with the hands in prayer position. You can go goalposts, or just have the hands on your knees. Essentially, what I'm going to do this in goalposts so we can see the movement at the spine a little bit better. I'm going to drop my left elbow down, so I have a longer curve on the right side. Try not to move the arms, just flexing laterally, trying to elongate one side and compress the other. So again, just like our cat-cow, we start with the upper body movement because it's a little bit easier than having to worry about the lower body also. Lateral flexion. Maybe not really exciting, but we'll get to use this a lot later. So this is part of the movement of the core to move or mobilize the chunk. Now, level 2, I'm going to try to move the hip up as I flex. So I'm going to lift the hip as I flex to get that muscle contracted. Try to lift the hip on the side that you're flexing towards and feel those muscles contract. Now, this is a flexion, and I want to make that a distinction between a lateral extension. So our flexion, we're bringing the hip and the rib closer together. In an extension, I'm trying to keep the sides of my torso parallel as I extend. So we're going to do this with warrior 2 arms, and I'm going to reach toward the horizon, trying to keep the outside lines of my trunk as parallel as possible. So what this is good for, and we'll play with this later, is to try to keep, because again, gravity always pushes down. As I start to extend over, you want those core muscles engaged to prevent this downward pull of gravity. So we can use the core to mobilize or to flex, or we can use the core to stabilize or extend. So that's enough sitting. Let's come up to standing and look at our third aspect of the core, which is balance. So coming up to standing, I want you to go to the left side of your chair. Now we're going to look at tree pose. Now we'll do eagle pose later, but tree pose is a good place to start. So let's look at mountain pose first. So starting with the feet closer together. And again, I want you to stay facing toward the chair. I'm going to turn to the side. So a lot of times when people stand, they stand like this, with a curve in the back and the knees locked. So what I want to do in tree pose, or to help support balance, is to have the knees unlocked and the hips tucked slightly. This creates a straighter line to the spine and brings my core into alignment, or the structures of the body into alignment. So we can use the glutes and the hips and the core to help us balance. Adjust upward with the sternum slightly and tuck the chin in. So we have a tuck, a lift, and a tuck. Trying to minimize these excessive curves. And the knees unlocked. If you lock the knees, that almost takes a joint out of play. So especially when you're balancing, keeping the knees unlocked can help. So remembering that, again, you stay facing to the camera. We're going to do tree pose, and then I'll turn to the side to kind of to demonstrate what I mean. So making sure that you are a little bit away from the chair. I'm going to shift my center over my support, which is going to be my right leg, making sure you're not in contact with the chair. So while we're here, again, shift, tuck, lift. Engage that tuck to engage the glute. Make sure the knees unlocked. Lift the sternum slightly. From here, you can narrow your base and come to the ankle or the calf. Hips and shoulders square. Again, lift it up from the sternum slightly. So we got tuck, lift, tuck the chin. We can stay here. You can use a hand on the chair or lift toward the ceiling. So we have two things. We structurally align ourselves over our base, and then posturally align ourselves by creating that extension and creating those muscular contractions that help us balance. Because again, we're thinking resist gravity. I'm lifting up. I lift up from the arch of the foot. I lift up from the pelvis. I lift up from the diaphragm. And I lift up from the crown of the head, which actually creates a little chin tuck. Again, thinking about those now four arches of the body. So let's lower down and repeat that on the opposite side. So when we receive, we have three arches: pelvic floor, diaphragm, shoulder girdle. Now, because our base is lower, our base is the feet, we have four arches. So the arch of the foot is just as much a part of the core as the rest of it, because that's a lift up away from gravity. You never want to allow yourself to collapse into the ankle. So going to the right side of the chair, I'm talking too much today. Shifting your weight to your left leg. Again, as we did before, unlock the knee, tuck, line up your base or your center over your support, lift, lift. From here, you can narrow your stance coming to the ankle, the calf, or the thigh, not putting any weight on the knee. So we're tucked here, lifted here, lifted here. And if you want, you can use the chair or lift the arms. So we have four lifts: arch of the foot, tuck the hips, lift the chest, lift the head, and the arms just kind of participate in this upward movement against gravity. And let's step down and come around to the back of the chair. So you stay facing the screen. I'm going to turn so we can start to look at this interplay between the hips and the hips and the rib cage while standing. So you stay facing the screen. I'm going to move my chair a little bit. And what we're going to do is do a partial downward facing dog. And look at this movement at the hips and the pelvis. So with the hands on the back of the chair, you're going to step back part way, bend the knees. Now we're going to do a standing version of a cat-cow, but really focusing on our tailbone more than the rib cage here, because this is a harder place to move. You can't see it. We have to just feel our way through it. So the first thing that we're going to do is try to lift the tailbone toward the ceiling, arching the back. Make sure the knees are locked, and then tuck under, rounding the back. Lift and tuck. Lift. So these are the exercises we can do at home that are tough to do in class or in the gym, but again, very important. Strengthening the lower back muscles and gaining more control and body awareness over the back side of the body. We're going to come back to this in just a second, showing you how much work it can be, and also hopefully how rewarding it can be, really helping to strengthen the lower back, strengthen the spine, and strengthen our motor control. So let's take this and make it a little bit more practical. You're going to need to go to the side of the chair for this one because we're going to be extending the spine. So if I'm facing the screen, I'm going to be on the left side of the chair, but I'm going to turn so that we can look at this action from the side. First thing that we're going to do, I'll make sure my feet stay in frame, so I'm going to bring my chair over here. First thing that we're going to do, facing toward the screen, lift up overhead, reaching, and then forward fold, bring the hands to the shins, ankles, feet, or floor. So you really don't have to go any lower than halfway. Here is fine, but if you want to get that good stretch, you can go lower. Now, if you notice, my back is a curve here. It's a curved line. So what I want to do with the fingertips, gently touching the legs, is lift the head and the eyes until my back is a flat line. So we're going to do this as a flow. Lower down, inhale up, exhale down. Inhale up, exhale down. Give me two more. Inhale up, exhale down. So again, also notice my knees are unlocked. If you do this with locked knees, that can put a lot of stretch down the hamstrings, so you can have those unlocked for a little bit of support. Also notice I'm back toward the hips, so I'm not leaning way forward. Weight is shifted back and lower down. Let's take it further. I'm going to grab my opposite elbow and lead with the elbows up and down. Are you feeling it in your back yet? Up and down. Let's go two more. So again, not technically a yoga exercise, but definitely helpful in our practice. One more time. Up and down. So we got one more stage here, and this is straight arm. So if at any point it gets too much, go back to a previous stage and just hang out here. We're going to do this last one 3 times. So you're going to have the hands lead with the thumbs, extend the arms up toward the horizon and down. And 2 more. Up, extend, and down. Last one. Up and down. We're going to bend the knees, drop the hips, tuck the tailbone, and roll up all the way up. Nice and slow. Head and shoulders coming up last. Let's take the hands to our lower back for support. Elbows back, shift the weight forward, cup the chin and roll up. Elbows pull back, weight shifts toward the toes. Eyes start to look toward the ceiling. Now, if you do this unsupported, so let's release and look at this, a back bend unsupported by the hands. The hands take the pressure off the back and the back bend. So what happens if we don't use the hands? Well, then we really have to rely again on the hips and the sternum or the rib cage. So now notice my feet are about outer hip width apart for this. What we're going to do is tuck the tailbone under, lift the chest, shifting the weight forward. You want to tuck the hips enough so that you'll get a stretch on the front of the hip flexor, maybe feel it in the abs, but not feel it in the back. If you have any sensation in the lower back, back off. So a back bend really can be tuck, and lift. And if you feel that here in the lower abdomen, that's your back bend. But to go further, we have to keep that tuck strong enough to keep the curve of the back open as the arms come up and back. So if you get any sensation in the back, you're probably going too far. I know there's yoga people out there that can go farther than I can, but you always want to listen to your body and do it safely rather than try to go to a landmark. So you're coming back all the way up, shake it out, and we're going to look at two different side bends. A side bend flexion stretch to stretch the outside of the body, and a side bend extension stretch to focus on using the core to stabilize against gravity. So our flexion, starting on the left side of the chair, I'm going to have my left hand on the hip, and my right arm I'm taking up and over into a side bend, shifting the weight to the right hip so that I can extend up and over. Trying to stretch through the side, the obliques. You can stay here to go farther. Bring the hand down to the side of the leg. And you can have the arm straight or curved. Doesn't really matter. Trying to elongate the outside of the body or the right side of the body from the heel out to the fingertips. Pulling through your arm to come all the way up. Let's take it a little bit further. So, same start. We're going to have the arms on the side, sliding down and extending up and over. Now what I want you to do is take your left arm parallel to the right as if you're holding a big beach ball. So I don't want it here. You have to extend. Now this will keep the sides of the trunk straighter, and you'll feel that side working a little bit more, especially if you're pretending to hold that big ball. You might not go as far, but you should really feel the core. So let's pull that ball all the way back up and lower down. Let's do the opposite side. Moving to the right side of the chair. Again, first flexion stretch, second extension stretch. So I'm starting here with my right hand on the hip. Left arm's going to go up and over and taking it as far as you're comfortable. You can also let that right arm down to be a long line from the outside of the left heel through the left fingertips. Now what you may notice is that you saw me just kind of roll my left foot out a little bit, keeping the arch of the foot active. And let's come all the way back up, pulling through the left arm to come all the way back up. Taking it into the extension, start the same way. With my right arm on the right leg, left arm comes up and over. You can stay here or bring that right arm parallel as if you're holding a big beach ball. Try to keep again the side of the body, a parallel line, feeling the core. And breathe. Coming all the way back up and release the arms. So let's take a quick water break, because after the break, we have a little bit farther to go with this practice. Both the extension aspect and the lateral aspect. Let's do this the same way that we did it before. Starting with spinal extension and then going to the lateral flexion. Well, I guess looking at forward and backward movements and then lateral movements. So again, I'm going to start, I want you to stay facing the camera. I'm going to turn and we're going to look at warrior 3. So when we looked at tree pose earlier, we shifted the weight, tucked the hips, lifted the chest. What this is doing is creating a slight extension through the spine, not a radical extension, but a controlled extension where the muscles are engaged. So if I drop back, nothing's engaged, I'm hanging into the spine. If I tuck and extend, the muscles in the lower back are active. So again, I said our core helps us work against gravity. Gravity pulls down. So if I'm doing a forward flexed balance pose like Warrior 3, I want that extension to help me stay balanced. So if you're facing toward the screen, your chair is going to be on your right-hand side, just so you can keep that in mind as we go through this. Just like tree pose, I'm going to shift my weight to the right leg with the knee unlocked. Shift my weight with the knee unlocked. You can use the chair, but I'm going to take my left foot and just put it back on the toe, just like a kickstand. Leaning back with the hips, trying to hinge forward. And notice as you start to hinge, your chest is going to want to collapse. So once we get about halfway, extend the tailbone up, trunk up. So again, if you think about this line here behind me as the line of gravity, as I bend forward and extend, that's more or less parallel to the line of gravity, meaning that these muscles on my back are helping to hold me up. So I'm here, I'm extended. You can stay here, you can lift the left leg, and you can have the arms down by your sides, reaching back or reaching out. Making sure to keep the knee unlocked at first. One other note is, again, we're shifting the center over the base. So it's really far out to the side as you start to come forward, and that'll help keep you aligned. So putting it all together, Warrior 3 for 5 breaths. Lift, flex, extend, coming to your variation, and let's go 5. When you're done lowering the left leg and coming all the way back up, we're just going to repeat that on the opposite leg. So if you're facing the screen, coming around to the right side of your chair, I'm going to move my chair out of the way. So next, step 1, shifting the weight to your left leg. Step 2, we're going to take your right foot back a little kickstand, starting to lean forward and extending the trunk. You can stay here. This can be Warrior 3 because you have your kickstand, you're practicing, you're extending your weights over your stance leg and your support is over your base. That can be Warrior 3. Going farther, you can lift the leg and have the arms down or use the chair. But I want you to keep practicing and focusing on extending the spine. So that way, even if it's not as aesthetic a pose as you want it to be, it's an effective pose. And to me, that's a more beautiful pose. Because you are in control from the center, starting to extend out. Always start from the center and extend out. So let's put it all together and do Warrior 3. Shifting the weight to your left leg, put the right leg back, extending the spine, hinge forward, coming to your modification or your variation, and 5 breaths. After your breaths, lowering the right leg and come all the way back up. Okay, so we've done forward flexion. Let's get an extension in there. And for this, we're just going to use Warrior 1. I like Warrior 1. Okay, I want you to stay facing toward the screen. I'm going to turn. Nothing fancy here, no fanfare. Wherever you start, the chair is going to be on your right-hand side. We're going to step back with your outer leg, in this case, left leg. All I need to do here, bend the right knee, just kind of over the center of the foot, and lift the chest. Now, what I want to do with this warrior is try to tuck the hips under and push through the heel to engage the glute, engage the lower abs, and create that hip flexor stretch. If you have that, we can bring the arms up. I'm going to go in front this time, up and back, lifting the sternum. So we're tucked here, lifted here. This kind of prevents this excessive drop back because you want an open curve through the lower spine. So we tuck, lift, lift, and try to be a long line from your left heel up through your fingertips and back with the thumb. Lowering the arms, let's step up and switch sides. So again, I'm going to go to the right side of the chair, and the outer leg steps back. You can stay facing the screen. I'm going to turn into like the side view. Stepping back with your outside leg or the right leg. Bending the left knee so it's over the ankle. I'm going to lift, tuck, lift, lift. So I'm pushing back to the right heel, tucking the hips under, lifting the sternum, and sweeping the arms up. Again, it does not have to be a really radical warrior one. Sometimes it's good to practice the poses smaller and focus more on details. So we can get down here and do a really deep warrior one, but the same principle applies. We're trying to tuck, lift, lift. So a smaller pose does not mean a worse pose. It means a more mindful pose, hopefully. Tuck, lift, lift. Slowly lowering the arms and step up. Okay, coming behind the chair, looking at lateral poses, and we're going to use triangle and side angle. So very common poses, but I want to look at side angle as a real extension, flexion, curvy bit, and triangle as the extension or the parallel core to engage the muscles of the core against that downward pull of gravity. So one of them we're using as a lengthener, side angle, and one we're using as a strengthener, triangle. I'm going to move my chair out of the way, but it's as if the chair was in front of me facing toward the screen. I want you to move the feet about one leg's length apart, wherever you're comfortable. Side angle first. So we're going to turn your left toes out to the side, and I like to kick my right heel out a little bit. Bending, again, knee over about the center of the foot, and we're going to extend over. So I'm bringing my left hand or forearm to the thigh, right arm up and over. So what I want to do here is lift the hip and the rib toward the ceiling as much as you can. This might cause you to straighten that knee a little bit, but then just bend back into it. So I have this little flow in the pose of lift and drop, and lift and drop. And you can see that allows us to sneak a little bit farther down, but I'm trying to be a big curve from the right heel through the right fingertips. As you come down, you can bring the arm on the outside, inside or outside of the leg. If, like here, my shoulders really compress, I'm going to drop it down, coming over. Let's do about 5 breaths. Pulling through the right arm to come all the way back up. And repeating on the opposite side. This gives us a nice balanced practice, and we can really focus on the details. So coming down, bend the knee, right hand or forearm to the thigh, and I come over. Again, lifting the ribs and the hips up toward the ceiling, straightening the knee, and then bending back in. Working your way down with that lift the hip, bend the knee, lift the hip, bend the knee. And if you need to at any point, drop in the one arm down to the side, inside or outside. If you need the support here and you're not comfortable going farther, don't go farther. Listen to your body. And 5 breaths. Pulling through your left arm to come back up. Square off, which means toes and sides of the feet parallel. Toes, sides of the feet square. All right, so we got our big lateral stretch. Now let's see if we can take triangle and make it a core strengthener. Same start. I'm going to turn my left toes out and the right heel out. This will bring my right hip forward just a little bit so that I have room to get into this hip. So I'm starting to go over, lead. Remember that seated exercise we did at the beginning? So I'm pushing the hips or rotating the hips this way to get into this inner thigh. You can take your hand and find the crease and just push into the crease, and you should feel that stretch down into the inner thigh or hamstring. While you're here, we can reach out and lower left arm down. What I want you to do with the right arm is come up and flatten it to the side. This will help engage the trunk and make sure you're roughly parallel. I want you to feel these muscles on the top side squeeze. Because again, gravity straight down. I'm extending the trunk to help resist the downward pull. And then we lift the right arm up. So I am trying to be a straighter line here. This side is lifting the trunk to help resist that downward pull of gravity. I'm reaching up and I'm tilting into the hip. Using all those muscles together to help fight that downward pull of gravity. Pulling through the right arm to come up and squaring off. Again, make sure the toes and the sides of the feet are square. From here, turning the right foot out and kick the heel of the left foot out. Same process. I'm going to reach with my right arm, trying to tilt the hips toward the left. Once you're here, you can take that right hand, find the crease, and push in. You're going to feel that stretch go down the hamstring and down to the inner thigh. You can take that right arm, reach, and lower down with your left arm. Again, I want it to come up and then flatten down, lifting the rib cage, making this a straight line. And you can do that a couple of times to feel those muscles activate, and then lift that left arm up. So we're pushing out here, hip out, rib cage lift, extend. So there's nothing wrong with the triangle where I'm flexing more, but I think this is a nice counterpoint to keep that trunk active. Poses are all about intention. What do I want to get out of it? And in this class, I just wanted to introduce you to this idea of extending the spine to keep those core muscles active. Pulling through the left arm to come up and squaring off. Narrow your stance. And again, having a chair right in front of you. I want you to stay facing toward the screen. I'm going to turn, and we're going to do a more relaxed forward fold, a downward facing dog. So earlier, we did a forward bend, focusing on practicing on that extension. This one's more passive. We're starting to cool down, starting to take an easier practice. So on the back of the chair, step back, shift back. It's not easier, I mean a little bit easier. What we can do from here is lift the tailbone. So instead of being here, I lift the tailbone, and that will increase the stretch on the hamstrings. But if the upper body stay relaxed, hanging into the arms, lift the tailbone. So bend the knees, drop the hips, slowly coming up, all the way up, and step in. Now, I know at the beginning of class I said that we were going to do eagle pose, and we are. Because eagle pose is kind of putting all the pieces together from all of the stuff we practiced today with a twist. So I said the core has three main functions. controlling the postural shape of the trunk, helping support us against gravity, and then physically moving the trunk either forward and backward or side to side. And also involved in breathing. But there's also this idea of what we call body awareness or proprioception. And in eagle pose, our arms and hands are in front of the face, so we're relying on our sense of the body structure. So let's get this going, building in one piece at a time. Being on the left side of the chair with a little bit of space. So I'm going to turn slightly. My right leg is the stance leg. And really, eagle pose is a little bit like a quarter squat. So I'm going to shift my weight over the right leg. Squat back like you're sitting on a stool. If you really want to get into that hip. Left leg is going to come up and over. And then rotate in. But my main focus is sitting here with the weight toward the IT band and the glute. And then after we get the arms in place, we can adjust upward. But really sitting into that side, that's your support. It's a partial squat, sitting into the hip, and then bring the leg over. Arms, so if I'm left leg over, right arm under. So we're going to start arms out. I'm going to take my left arm in and up at a right angle from the shoulder, and my right arm down and around, going towards the other side. If you can't touch, don't worry about it. You do not have to complete the bind for it to be a successful eagle. So go with where you are today. Let's put it together, lower body and then upper body. So I'm shifting to the side, squatting down, coming over, and then rotate that knee in to help lock it together. I go right arm under. And let the eagle spread its wings up and out and down. All right, so let's try that on the other side. Again, going through the lower body first and then upper body and then putting it together. So starting by shifting the weight to your left leg, bend the knee in a little bit of a squat. And I'm going to try to bring that right leg up and over and then in. But again, really sitting on that left hip, pretending you have something to sit onto, getting into the IT band, into the glute. Coming up and off. Arms, so it's left arm under the sun, right arm in and up, right angle from the shoulder, left arm down and around. Again, if you can't make the bind, don't worry about it. But starting with the lower body first. Shift your weight to the left foot, center over base, cross and knee up to help lock it in, but still sitting into the side. Right leg over, left arm under, and cross. I think up to the top of the head and breathe. And release. Okay, so let's have another quick water break. We're going to start winding down. So I like to stretch down through the body from the head to feet. Again, away from the back of the chair. I'm trying to make sure that when I do my hamstring stretch, my feet are in there. Okay. So starting with the head, I'm going to go ear to shoulder. And you can choose where you feel the stretch. We're turning chin toward the shoulder or away from it a little bit. You can take that arm on the same side and gently provide a little bit of pressure. And release. So I'm going ear to shoulder. And again, you can optionally use that arm to write a little bit of pressure. And release. So I will mention one thing. I want you to stay facing toward the camera. I'm going to turn toward the screen. So when we do this, extend the spine, a lot of times it's easy to cue leading with the head because the spine will follow the eyes. But that can put a lot of pressure on the back of the neck. So you can actually keep the chin down and lift the sternum to create that spinal extension. But at first, especially while you're building that body awareness, it's easiest to lead with the head. So let's stretch the back of the neck, sitting up tall from the sternum. Bring the chin to your collarbone. So it's as you drop the head, you don't want to collapse. Keep that sternum lifted. And you can take one or both hands and provide gentle downward pressure. So the hand pulls down, sternum lifts up. And release. So we did not do pretty much any twists today. We looked at twisting on my class last week, and twists are a complicated combination of that extension and rotation. So we'll look at twists more later, but just to get some in, let's do one now. Giving yourself a big hug. Turn as far as you can over the left shoulder, looking with your eyes. And give me 3 breaths. Coming back to the center. Switching arms. Uncross, cross, and turn to the right. So what I mean by looking with the eyes is turn your eyes as far toward the corner of your eye socket as you can, and that will help increase the range of motion of the turn. So you starting with the eyes to the right, and then let the head and the rest of the body follow. Turning your eyes first and letting the body follow that movement. Slowly coming back to the center. Moving down. I want you to bring the hands to the knees and the feet to a wide V shape. And what we're doing here is keeping those knees pushed outwards or rotated outwards slightly to keep the outer hip abductors and external rotators a little bit active. So we're not just here, because that won't help us stretch the inner thigh. So from here, lift the sternum, lead with the sternum forward, coming down to a comfortable point. I'm keeping my hands here for support, but if you wanted to go farther, you can let them down, as long as the head doesn't go below the heart. And slowly coming back up, using the arms for support. Bring the feet back to the center, and get your left foot forward, toes lifted. So I want you to stay facing the screen. I'm going to turn, because here we get to focus on that extension again. I'm having my hands on my right leg, leaning forward. To start with, flex the toe, try to roll forward on the sit bone, and maybe lift the chin toward the horizon. So not excessively flexing the neck, but just enough to bring that sternum up a little. Try to make the body an L shape. We don't want to drop the hips back because that lets the whole back round. Just set that tailbone forward, trying to extend. So even if you're here and you're sitting forward, and still feel that stretch, you're fine. It's not about how far you go. It's really about muscle versus muscle to help it stretch. And slowly coming up. Switching sides. So same thing. Left foot flat, right foot out. I'm going to lean forward first, flex the toe, and sit from the tailbone. Now you can reach for the toe if you want. There's nothing wrong with curving the back. I just think it's a nice counterbalance to a typical yoga practice to focus really on that extension, to focus from the center outwards. Have your center secure and extend from there. And slowly coming back up. From here, I do want you to scoot all the way back in the chair and have the feet out in front of you so the legs are relaxed. You want the chair to hold you up. Really worked, especially the lower back a lot today. And I like that about yoga because we're focused on really using that pelvic mechanic in a really functional way. So in traditional exercise, we do a lot of sit-ups and crunches focusing on the front side of the body, but most people are already shoulders forward, head forward, chin forward throughout the day on phones or on computers. So it's nice to be able to extend up and open up and strengthen the back without collapsing into the spine. But for now, letting that rest, sinking into the chair. The hands can be on the lap, palms up or palms down, and go back to right where we started. Big, full, comfortable breath in, and let it go. Give me 3 more breaths like that at your own pace. Comfortable breath in and let it out. When you're ready, 3, 2, 1. One more time. So to end the practice, what I'd like to do is go back to that Ujjayi breath that we did at the beginning. Because again, I think it's a really powerful breathing practice, helping to engage the core, giving your brain something to focus on by creating that contraction and listening to the sound. It's a more active way to do a breathing meditation. If you're not comfortable or don't know well enough how to do the Ujjayi breath, just simply observe your breathing. But for the next few minutes, I'm going to stay silent and do the Ujjayi breathing and welcome you to join me in breath. So when you're ready, relax comfortably. Focus your attention on the movement of your breath. Whatever type of breath you're using, feel the physical movement of your body as you breathe. And let's just observe the next 5 breaths as they come naturally, without any effort, without trying to control the breath, simply observing for the movement of 5 entire breaths. So after your 5 breaths, allow yourself to stretch however you think it would feel good with the eyes still closed. All right. So again, if you like this class, please consider giving a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel. I want to check the comments in the section because I can't see them from here. But thank you very much for joining me from my living room to wherever you're watching from. I want to say namaste. And let this practice carry you through the rest of your day and whatever else you do. Thank you. All right, toward the computer. Oh, wow. All right, thank you for joining us. Here I go, signing off. See you next time.